Okay, so I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers depth chart and just roster. I'll just go through their whole team and just kind of give my thoughts on the roster as a whole. So we'll start with the receiver position. Pretty good group. They got Juju Smith-Schuster, who they brought back on a pretty decent contract. He was pretty good last year. Didn't really run a lot of deep routes. Kind of just run after catch player, but good slot receiver. Like he can get separation, has good speed and athleticism. Just good all around player. It'll be interesting to see if they can reach possibly a long term deal. I think it is unlikely. I feel like he could definitely be gone after this year. But for like an option for Ben Roethlisberger, like Juju Smith Schuster is a very reliable target. And I mean, like the whole Steelers team, like they can probably improve on catching the ball. But I think Juju Smith is a good number one. Not high end, but really good out the slot. And Chase Claypool was very surprising as a rookie last year. Was very good at points, and then just sometimes just disappeared. But overall, was a very good deep threat for them. Just good all around player. Scored touchdowns and like really showed that he could get separation and really beat corners one on one. So I really like Chase Claypool. I think he could develop really well into a really like elite even receiver just because he's just such a contested big receiver who can just like bully you off the line, get separation, and has good speed. So I do like Chase Claypool. And Deontay Johnson, yeah, he'll probably rotate in and out with James Washington on like the outside. Deontay Johnson can play the slot also. They have him listed here. That's kind of Juju's role, even though Juju is like bigger. We'll see Deontay Johnson and James Washington, these two guys. Deontay Johnson, he had kind of a breakout year before last season, was just very good, and then wasn't as amazing last year, had a lot of drops. He definitely needs to improve on that. He can do that. I still think he's a good target and a good receiving option for this offense. I do like Deontay Johnson. If he can just cut back on drops, I think he'd be a reliable target. And James Washington also hasn't really developed into that starter that they would have liked when they drafted him. I've still been a decent receiver. I think he could be due for maybe a breakout, but I just doubt it at this point really. I feel like he's just kind of a backup now or like third receiver, which isn't horrible. Like I think he could still be pretty reliable and could get you some decent play. We'll just have to see. They do have Ray McLeod, who showed some decent play, kind of more of a special teamer, like but just really fast. Like he had that jet sweep or something. I think it was where I think it was maybe the Browns he was up against, where he just had like a really big gain and like scored a touchdown, I think it was nearly a touchdown. So he definitely got amazing speed and showed some good stuff as a returner. So I think as a fifth receiver, I think he can come in also at points and maybe get you some good snaps, but he's probably not really going to be that in this offense. He's kind of going to be a special teamer. Anthony Johnson also decent backup. We'll see where he is on the roster. And then two rookies, Isaiah McCoy, Rico Bussey. I'd watch out for Rico Bussey. He could have a chance to make the roster. He was not a horrible player. Pretty good undrafted pickup. So see with him and nobody really else on the roster to be honest. And the offensive line, big question mark for the Steelers. They got Chukwuma uh, Okorafor, who will probably be starting a left tackle for them. Yeah, he showed some pretty decent play last year. Just hasn't really had a ton of snaps to start and hasn't really shown a lot really. But I think maybe could be a surprising player on this offensive line, and you can maybe see some decent play from him. It's kind of just a big question mark. You don't really know what to expect with him just because of that limited sample size. It could be pretty decent. I'm not 100% sure. I do think Dan Moore was a pretty decent draft pick. I think he's definitely not ready to start straight away. I think he could play at guard. Probably not going to play for guard for them straight away. But I think maybe for the future, you got yourselves a future guard or tackle. And even if you don't, I think he'd be a reliable backup. So I did like Dan Moore. Just a really big player also. Just needs some development. Kevin Dotson was actually pretty good for them the left guard position for them when he came in last year. Actually showed some pretty decent play. So I think that's somebody you can you feel comfortable with. starting on the offensive line. Kevin Dotson could be due for a bit of a breakout year. Could be probably one of their best players on the offensive line because it's a young, talented player who just hasn't like hit his peak yet. Definitely still has some development to have, so you could see him getting much better. And center position, they're probably gonna have a battle. I don't really see J.C. Hassenauer starting at center. He's just not good. It's probably gonna be between B.J. Finney, Kendrick Green. B.J. Finney's not really been a good center either in the league. But I think Kendrick Green probably wins it. He was actually a pretty decent center prospect coming out of college. I think it would be a good replacement for Marquise Pouncey. And like, cause I mean, I thought he was one of the best centers coming into the draft, and you get yourself a good center to replace Marquise Pouncey that really needed that. Like if you're rolling out BJ Finney, I don't really know about that. BJ Finney probably just a backup at best. Now might not even make a roster on a lot of teams. So I think Kendrick Green definitely starts at center. Could start at guard, but probably going to be a center because I think that's probably his best role. They still got David DeCastro on the offensive line, who's just been a really reliable player for a long time. He has had some injuries recently, but hasn't been that injury prone throughout his whole career. So you'd love David DeCastro, kind of the only really veteran left on this offensive line, and does have some versatility if players go down at other positions. Just good, reliable player. They don't really got much as backups though. Yeah. The right tackle, they got Zach Banner. He's okay. He's not a really high end starter. He definitely isn't. But I think he could definitely be okay. I don't think their tackle duo is amazing for the Steelers. I think at best they're probably just average players at most. Chukwuma Okorafor probably has the highest upside. Kevin Dawson's kind of reached his peak, doesn't really have any more development to happen. But I think he'd be pretty reliable, so it's fine. Joe Haig also backup. I think that's fine. Tight end position, they got Eric Ebron. Kind of been a bit inconsistent in his career. Definitely not lived up to where he was drafted. Early round draft pick for the Steelers. And he's still pretty decent tight end. Doesn't really deserve a massive contract now. Kind of more of a receiving weapon. Has some drops last year, this whole team. But I think number one tight end, Eric Ebron, definitely can be that. Don't know why I just clicked on him. But yeah, Eric Ebron, you feel pretty good with him. And Pat Freiermuth, bit of a surprising pick, to be honest, with already having Zach Gentry and Eric Ebron. They picked Pat Freiermuth when I thought they probably should have addressed the offensive line or a position group or corner. So I didn't really love the pick, but I like the player in Pat Freiermuth. I think he can be a number one tight end in the league. When you already got Eric Ebron and didn't love it, I think he will offer a good blocker, which they kind of need for that run game also, and will also give you a decent receiving threat, a bit of a raw player, just kind of good athlete, not really an amazing athlete, but has some good athleticism and decent blocker. So you like Pat Freiermuth, was probably the second best tight end in the class. I think I had him probably second best, yeah. So Pat Freiermuth, he'll probably be a pretty decent player. And Zach Gentry, third tight end, that's pretty good also. He's a pretty reliable target. So that's fine. Nobody really else. So let's go into quarterback position. They got Ben Roethlisberger, aging veteran, definitely took a hit in his arm last year. Just didn't really look as strong. He just, all his passes were just short underneath. Let your players do it. So I don't really know if you can bring them to a Super Bowl. I'm not that high on the Steelers team, and it's kind of really about this offensive line and Ben Roethlisberger just not being the player that he used to be. Just doesn't really have that zip on his arm. Still a smart player, but if they had an elite quarterback, then I think this offense would just be very good. And I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is that. Mason Rudolph, they got good backups. Mason Rudolph, he's an okay backup. Joshua Dobbs, Dwayne Haskins, we'll see with them. I think Dwayne Haskins is an interesting first round pick. Still probably has some upside. They can maybe see him being the starter after Ben Roethlisberger. Just kind of depends how he looks in preseason and what they think of him, because I don't really know if he really is like has a chance to be a starter in his career outside of Pittsburgh. Running back position, Najee Harris is drafted in the first round. Didn't love drafting a running back in the first round, especially for all the offensive line talent and cornerback talent still available. But I mean, Najee Harris, very good running back coming out of the draft. Number one running back for me. Thought he was a very good running back. Just kind of has a pretty high floor. I just think with his athleticism and the way he plays, his vision in the running game is just very good. But I feel like this offensive line could definitely hold him back because you only got a good running game if your offensive line is good. Like, you can't just have an elite running back and a horrible offensive line because then the running back's not going to have anywhere to go with the ball. Like, you build your offensive line first and you can just get average players even. Like, you've seen what the 49ers have done where they've just had, like, not amazing running backs, just a really good offensive line, and they've turned into players that look really good. I think for a team that doesn't really need a lot of needs, like I think picking a running back is good. I didn't really love it for the Steelers, although I do like the player Najee Harris. I think he could have a good year. It just kind of really depends on the offensive line. That's the only thing. Like I can think he can be a top 10, top 5 even running back. And Benny Snell also decent back and kind of more of that power back. He's fine. Anthony McFarland probably will bring you more of that pass catching. I definitely could probably be that number 3 running back. There'll probably be a battle for that number 4 and then maybe a practice squad player. Then one of these dudes is definitely going to get cut. Probably maybe even 2. Keenan Balaj was actually pretty good when he had a resurgence with the Chargers. He actually showed some pretty good play. Just hasn't really been amazing like anywhere else, to be honest. So I don't know if it makes a roster, but it could be a good complement to Najee Harris. So I do like Keelan Ballage. And like Jalen Samuels, Trey Edmonds. Trey Edmonds not really shown much. And Jalen Samuels also, they just haven't really given a lot of opportunities. So maybe if they get him some more chance, I think he could possibly take over that role. And Derek Watt, fullback. Whatevs is fullback position. Let's go into defense. Defensive tackle, Cameron Hayward, really good defensive lineman. Good at rushing the passer, just good run blocker, just very good all-around player. Kind of underrated now. Cameron Hayward, really good player, so that's fine. They also got Tyson Alualu, who they managed to bring back, who had a good year when Stephon Tuitt went down. Tyson Alualu kind of stepped up, had a bit of a breakout year because this hasn't really shown much any time before then. Just kind of gives you that veteran run stopper and can have some pass rush. Isaiah Buggs, Carlos Davis, just backup really. Chris Wormley's could actually get himself more in the rotation. And like DeMarcus Christmas, like nobody really else, but they're fine backups like Isaiah Buggs, Chris Wormley. They're okay. And I mean, the other defensive lineman, Stephon Tuitt, still a really good player. Was injured at points last year, but showed some good play. Like I think Stephon Tuitt's fine. It's probably their number 2 defensive tackle, probably Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt. Then Alualu probably coming in for more of those goal line, run stopping positions. And they'll use 3 defensive linemen. Like they'll rotate these guys in and out. They did draft Isaiah Loudermilk like pretty like in the 5th round or 6th round. I thought he would just be an undrafted player. I didn't think he was that good. I mean, he isn't really that good. He hasn't really shown worthy play to be where he got drafted. But he'll probably get some snaps of how they used him. Just doesn't really have a ton of upside and doesn't really offer much as a pass rusher. So they're going to have a good run blocking, like run stopping defensive line. It's definitely what they're going for, I think. But they can also have some pass rush more with Stephon Tuitt and Cameron Hayward, to be honest. But they're both good run stoppers. And TJ Watt is that pass rusher, one of the best pass rushers in the league. Could have a bit of like a down year. I wouldn't say down. Like I still think he could have double-digit sacks. But I definitely think that Bud Dupree, like they both really helped each other out. We'll see what Alex Highsmith can do, but they definitely did help each other out at points. I still think TJ Watt, very good pass rusher, elite athlete, just amazing technique. Love TJ Watt. Cassius Mars, backup, see if they make the roster. Like players like Jamar Watson could possibly make his way further up the depth chart and kick somebody out like Cassius Mars, who hasn't really been a massive impact on really anybody. And the other pass rusher, Alex Highsmith, probably going to start there. He didn't look bad when Bud Dupree went down. Definitely didn't have the impact that he did, and it was definitely shown. But he's still a really young player and showed some decent play for being a young rookie who wasn't drafted super highly. And I think he could have a good year next year. I don't know if he'll rack up sacks. I don't think he'll be as good as people maybe are hyping him up. But I think he's a bit undersized, but not really too badly. But he can jump back in coverage and play some good coverage. I think Alex Highsmith could be a good player. I thought Quincy Roche was also a good pickup. It was either a late round pick or undrafted. But I think I'd give a good compliment to both of these pass rushers, kind of being that third pass rusher. He's just primarily a speed rusher, and I think you bring him in for that. He'll just run past your offensive line, just a really good athlete. For the linebackers, Devin Bush coming back from injury. We'll see how he is. When he is healthy, one of the best linebackers in the league. Still a really young player, good athlete, and you kind of need that good linebacker nowadays. It's a very hard position to play, and Devin Bush has shown that he can play at an elite level. And Vince Williams kind of being that veteran player for them on this defense, kind of the quarterback of the defense. So he's definitely probably going to start there at the second linebacker position just because he's a veteran. He's not really an amazing player anymore, but you kind of just need that player to command the defense because it's very hard and just get everybody set. And Robert Spillane, kind of a liability in coverage, is kind of a really good run stopper. That's kind of what he does, is destroys people with the running game. Just not really a plus-size athlete. But I think Rob Spillane, he's kind of just been a backup in his career, and I think as a third linebacker, I think it's very good. They do have Marcus Allen, who was a safety most of his career. I guess he's transitioning to linebacker, so we'll see if that gives him more coverage at the linebacker position. Buddy Johnson, I think, could definitely make the roster, and if players get injured, like Devin Bush last year, you could maybe see him getting some playing time, kind of being that Avery Williamson from last year. I think Buddy Johnson was a pretty decent player coming out. Probably going to play more special teams, but definitely see him making the roster because he's a pretty decent player. I think, you just stick him special teams first and then just develop him, and maybe you got yourself a future replacement for Vince Williams. And all else is Gilbert. Nobody really else. Secondary, they got Joe Hayden. Still a pretty decent corner. Not as good as he was, of course, but still can be a very reliable veteran corner. So that's kind of the only really player they can rely on. If he is your number one corner, it's maybe a bit of a liability, but Joe Hayden, you could definitely do better, but he's still pretty decent corner, so you like that. It kind of gives you that physicality. Also, second corner, probably going to be Cameron Sutton, to be honest, on the outside. Could definitely start in the slot. Maybe he's pretty versatile. So they could use dudes in a lot of different ways. I could see them Justin Lane and Cameron Sutton kind of rotating in and out at both of those positions. Maybe just sticking targets. But Cameron Sutton in the slot definitely could be the option. He's shown some pretty decent play. Still a young player. You could have something there. I'm not 100% sure. I definitely thought that they should have brought in somebody in the draft, with one of their early picks, or somebody in free agency, even somebody now they could pick up. I think they probably need a better corner than what they got, especially with the third cornerback being Justin Lane or Arthur Mollett. Arthur Mollett's kind of been rotated in and out as a safety and corner. Just not an amazing player, just a decent backup special teamer. And Justin Lane's not being that amazing, but you haven't seen a lot from him, so you could have something there. I just doubt it. Steven Denmark, they really got nobody else. Shakur Brown could make the roster. I could definitely see that happening. He had some pretty decent tape from Michigan State. Some people really liked him. Before the season, pretty much where he was a bit down. People had him pretty high up and pretty hyped. So I think that's definitely a possibility. Same with Mark Gilbert. We'll see with these dudes. And the safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick, very good player. He'll play some slot for them also because he's just a good safety. Like, he's really been very good since he's come over to Steelers. Will play that more free safety role, just kind of used all over the place. Very versatile defensive secondary player. Like, I think that's probably the best player on this whole secondary, and definitely takes a load off of this cornerback group and really helped them out. And Terrell Edmonds definitely not being as good as where they drafted him. Like, they could have drafted freaking Derwin James, even though Derwin James is healthy. Like, Terrell Edmonds hasn't been injury prone, just hasn't really been a good player. That's kind of it. Like, Anton Brooks probably has some upside, really. Maybe replacement for Terrell Edmonds. If he does really bad, you put him in. Miles Killebrew, he's probably going to play more linebacker. He did transition to linebacker in Detroit. We'll see with him. Trey Norwood's more of a corner. I don't know why they haven't looked at safety. I think he has a good chance to get into the rotation at the cornerback position, because he wasn't a horrible player, just kind of a bit raw prospect, just good athlete. So see if that. Lamont Wade also, another versatile player in the draft. So they got some young players that could definitely come out of nowhere. I'm just not that high on the secondary. Like, only really Minka Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden are the guys you got. And in this division, they got a lot of good pass catchers. It's going to be pretty hard. Like, I think their defensive line's very good, and the linebacker position is good, but we'll see with the secondary. And the offense, like, running back is good, but kind of just depends on the offensive line and how they play. And I don't really think the offensive line is really good, besides like David DeCastro and like Kevin Dotson, and possibly a breakout from like Chukwuma Okorafor. Like, we'll just have to see. There's a lot of question marks. Eric Ebron, like, tight end position is good, and then this quarterback position, like, just depends on how Ben Roethlisberger plays. Maybe he has a good year, or maybe just really drops off, and that could kind of just be the end of their season. And receiver position is good. Quick overlook at special teams. Jordan Berry, Presley Harvin probably going to compete in camp. Presley Harvin bombed balls in college. Like, he was like a 260-pound kicker. Just a really big player. And then Chris Boswell, pretty decent kicker. Has some definite, like, down moments in his career. But overall, he's been a pretty reliable player. And kicker Turner, probably going to be Ray McCloud. He's been very reliable at that. And like Anthony McFarland could definitely get himself in that role. Well, let's see. So that's the Steelers. I don't know. It's going to be hard to win the division with the other teams they got. They definitely have a shot at it. It's just going to be very hard. And I don't really think they're going to be able to repeat the record that they had last year. And I think they could definitely miss out on playoffs. But they do have Mike Tomlin, who's one of the best head coaches in the league. Definitely help this team out. We'll get them some wins just based off their coaching staff. Overall, Pittsburgh Steelers, they definitely dropped off from last year overall in like their defense. So I don't really have as high